There is more joy in heaven over the one that is found than the 99 who stayed righteous. Well, for the body of Christ, our goal is to bring joy to heaven. It's not that Jesus didn't care about the 99. He just knew they will never reach their discipleship maximum potential if we're not focused on reaching the one. And that's who we are as a church.
Hey guys, this is Frank coming to you live with another episode of Modern Church Leader, or you might be catching the recording. Either way, today's episode is going to be a super fun one. We're going to be talking about kind of crazy church growth. So I am joined by the senior pastor of Canvas Church out in Montana, Mr.
Come on,
Kevin.
Kalispell.
Yeah. How do you say it?
Kalispell, Montana.
Yeah, that's amazing. But Pastor Kevin Geer, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love it. Glad to be here.
We had a pretty fun conversation about being a Jeep guy and all that entails. But I'm not a Jeep guy, but I do want to go to Moab with you one day and ride.
Going on Father's Day. So excited.
It's gonna be fun. So what got you to Montana? Are you born and raised there?
I wasn't born in Montana, but I would never tell anybody that. I was born in Washington, but I lived in Montana all my forming years.
We'll keep this podcast a secret. We'll make sure
everybody knows now. But I don't know if people know podcasts exist in Montana yet. But I grew up in Montana, moved my senior year to Washington, spent 20 years in Washington, Seattle area. And then this is my first and only pastorate here as a lead pastor here in Kalispell. My wife and I honeymooned at Glacier National Park, which is the backyard of Kalispell. So we're back, since 2012, living our honeymoon. We love it here in Montana. So, but the reason I don't tell people I wasn't born here is because when you move to Montana, especially now, because so many people are moving here, there's a lot of Montana pride. And so I always say, when I grew up in Montana, well, whatever I say after that, people believe is biblical truth. So that's the card to play.
You've learned the secret of how to survive and thrive out in Montana.
Right.
Well, I mean, look, we're going to dig into kind of your, I guess not your, but God's story, growing the church out there and the amazing things that have happened over the last 10 years. But why don't you just, for the folks that are getting to know you, like, how did you get into ministry and how did you get into becoming the senior pastor there?
I'm doing what I love. I got to tell you that. When I was, just real small, when I was 8 years old, I knew I was going to be a pastor. My dad was a pastor, had an encounter with God. 8 years old, I had an encounter with God that I go back to often. That was a hunger for people to know Jesus. And I never lost that hunger that I really believe was supernaturally put in my heart to love lost people. And so when I was 12, my dad was a pastor. The lady that did children's church got mad at my dad and left, which means I had no children's church director. So I started doing children's ministries when I was 12 years old. I asked my dad if I could. He found another lady that sat downstairs in that church, and I told Bible stories to kids that I was my age. And honestly, I did that until I went to college. And then at college, I wanted to be a lead pastor. Always wanted to be a lead pastor. And when I was at college, Lord just spoke to me and goes, "You're going to go into kids ministries." So it's not where I wanted to go, but that's where he wanted me to go. So I humbled myself and went there and did children's ministries for a long time. In the inner city of Seattle. And then I became part of our network fellowship of leading children's pastors. And then I was out of that after about 20 years in kids ministries that the door opened up for me to become a lead pastor here at Campus Church. I'm a Christian center when I came here. And God knew the journey that I needed to go through to be able to be equipped to be able to do what we're doing today. So I have zero regrets following God's call. The only regrets I have is when I don't follow his call. So I have zero regrets following where he wanted me to go.
Well, I don't know. Is like the story that being the children's pastor for that long taught you how to take care of the adults, because we're all just a bunch of kids anyways. Like I don't really know.
Isn't it true? I just preach like a children's pastor,
Totally.
and we're all there. So there it
And
goes.
it
I just like
works.
to have fun and go. It
Everyone
does.
understands, right? Yeah, you're using language that we can all kind of understand. Like, keep it simple.
Well, and I'm dyslexic, so I can't say words over 3 syllables anyways. So it's just perfect for me. I have to break it down to simple terms just so I can say it. So that
Yeah,
just
yeah.
works.
Lots of like activity-based youth group
Yeah.
style. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Lots of emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So that's
I
what I
mean,
did. That's what got me here.
Yeah, that's really cool. And Montana, I mean, I don't know much about it, but like you mentioned, it seems like lots of people have moved out there. It must be a cool
Yeah,
place to live.
in the last year, Kalispell, I just read this. Kalispell is the fastest growing microplex, which is just smaller than a larger city. They're called microplexes. We're the
Okay.
fastest growing microplex in America right now in the past year. So fastest growing city in Montana, fastest growing county in Montana.
Wow.
Um, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful here. You can't buy a house because there's no property or land or houses, but people are moving here anyways.
Everyone's just got a tent. They're just hanging out
Li-
until
I
houses are
was I
built.
was out jeeping. It's true. I was out jeeping out on a forest road, and the amount of tents that and campers people are just planting on forest land living right now. It's insane. I'm not
That's
joking. It's
that's
crazy.
crazy.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
well, they
sounds like
need a church. We'll be their church.
yeah,
So
you're good, right? You get them all
come
out.
on, come
So
on. Yeah.
another thing before we get into the church story, you've got a big family.
I got a wonderful, patient, never shaken wife. Her name's Tiffany. And then we have five biological children, 21 all the way down to 8 years old. And they're all girls, but the second, who's my boy, Connor. And then we do foster care. And so we've had a lot of foster care kids through our house. And currently we have two foster kids living with us for quite a long time. And they're 3 and 4 years old.
Wow.
So we have a busy life.
Yeah,
It's
from
awesome.
3 to 21.
Yeah. Well,
That's
two of them are out of the house, so we do celebrate that.
okay.
So
Yeah, they're still welcome back for dinner once in a while, but they're not in the
we
house.
do family dinner every Sunday. Sunday at 4 o'clock, everybody comes back home and we have a big family dinner. That's
That's
been a
amazing.
ritual we started.
So I wanted
We
to
love it.
ask, I want to ask one family question, and that might be your answer, or you might have something else. But you're a Christian family. You got a big family. You got all these
Yeah.
kids fostering. I'm a dad of three. They're 10. They're in fifth
Mm.
grade, triplets. So I just always love to ask, like, what's your best parenting advice? Give me your
Uh,
top.
we uh, the first thing that came to my mind is also a trait that we use on a characteristic of our church as well, and that is we are a no secret home. There's no secrets. Everybody tells everybody everything. And
I love that.
my wife and I started that saying, "Mom and Dad don't keep secrets from each other," and it sort of morphed into nobody in our family keeps secrets from one another. And so you always know where you stand,
Yeah,
which builds confidence in you. You always know what's going on, and there's no games playing. We all are for each other because we all know each other. So it's a little different, but that's what we say
beautiful,
probably 3 times a week. We're a no secret home, and so that leads to great conversations, and we know
dude.
what's going on in our kids' lives.
I'm stealing that one. That's amazing.
There you
Good
go.
stuff.
Yeah.
And you use it with the church. So your church went from 500 to over
Hmm.
4,000 in
Hmm.
whatever relatively short period, 10 years or so. You've got 5 campuses.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
let's just talk about that. I'd love to unpack that story. And you
Okay.
get there in 2012, and here we are in 2022 through a pandemic and all the crazy of the last
It's
couple of years.
crazy.
It's crazy, but your church growth is crazy through all of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I don't
Yeah.
know, take us back to 2012.
Well, in 2012, the church had been without a pastor for over 18 months. And so whenever a church is without a pastor for 18 months, it's just difficult.
Yeah.
And it loses its identity. And so I had the church secret shopped before I came here. I had three friends that I paid to come to church here and investigate it for me. And all three said they wouldn't go back. And
So
it
you're
just
like,
wasn't the
all
kind of
right, I'm
church they
going.
wanted. I'm like, oh, I I was scared. I showed up my first week, and I walked into Starbucks and I said, "Hey, I'm new to town. Where should I go to church?" And the barista listed 3 different churches, has no clue who I am, and then says, "But I wouldn't go to this church." And the church she picked not to go to was my church. And so I'm like, oh, and 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 so it I believe in no secrets. So in the first 3 weeks of the church, I read those reports to my church.
Yeah.
And I just said, the leader in the room is the one that talks about the elephant in the room. Doesn't matter your position, doesn't matter your qualification. Whoever will point out the elephant in the room in a loving, caring way to address it, people will follow. And that's what I did at the very beginning. And I just said, here's who we are. We had become, unfortunately, we had become a pretty unhealthy church. We were doing we had an orchestra, we had a choir, and they were great, and people loved them. We did a Christmas musical that had 11,000 people go every Christmas. And that really was our identity in the community. Um, and so we ended all of those within the first few weeks of me coming here.
Wow.
So you see that scar? You see
Yeah.
that scar? No, it was brutal. But what we decided as a leadership team, and I had a wonderful board. Since I was 8, I had been praying for my board because I knew my dad's board and I didn't want them. And so God answered those prayers of that 8-year-old. And when I said to the board, I said this at the very beginning, and we'll get to the full story, but this so created those first 6 months were so fundamental of the trajectory that we went on. I told the board, I go, I'm going to ask you a personal question, but it has an organizational answer. And I go, if your heart stops right now at this board meeting, do you want me to put chemicals in your body over the next 3 to 4 months and slowly get your heart beating again? Or do you want me to shock you, even though innocent cells are going to die, but your heart will start beating immediately? And when they went around the room, they all said, shock them. And I said, the heartbeat of our church is dead. And we don't want to take 3 to 4 years to get it going. Let's shock our church.
Hmm.
And this is what it's going to look like.
Wow.
And then I use the illustration. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off because I don't want to feel every hair get ripped out. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And this board, average age in their upper 60s, lower 70s, they said, we're ready to go. Incredible. Some of those board members lost lifelong friends because of the decisions that they made. And yet God honored them.
Yeah.
And God honored his commitment to, we were going to reach people for Jesus. And so as we began to make those difficult decisions, knowing that we were led by God, laid off 11 people within the first month, and decided we're going to shift our culture, God honored that. So every family that left, 3 families came in their place. And, when you're leading change, one of the things that you have to talk about the most is what is not changing.
Right.
Because change is fearful. So
Yeah.
every week I'd get up and I'd grab the Bible. I go, this is God's word. It does not change. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I'd watch people go, in the midst of change, the important things aren't changing.
Right.
And that was able to build some trust there as we began to move forward. And so that sort of began our journey. The other thing is we were very clear because I don't keep secrets. I was telling the church everything we were doing. They were in on it. And we decided before we really wanted to be a church that would reach out, we wanted to become healthy inward.
Mm-hmm.
Before we became part of the fabric of the community, we had to become who we needed to become. Um, and as we did that, I preached a couple of those kind of messages. What is church and how should we think? And then we changed our name to Canvas Church, and we reintroduced ourselves to the community. And we built a lobby. We got rid of pews and we updated our church. I mean, if you walk into your building and it feels like 1980, then the truth that you're speaking is 1980s truth. And that's the conclusion they're going to come to. But when it comes to the Bible, 1980s truth is just like 2022 truth.
Yeah.
But people aren't going to think it's relevant to their life. And so we really did that and then reintroduced ourselves to the community. And I'll say one more thing. And then we decided there's two statements that I think are important to us. And one is we believe that the mission is more important than people's feelings or emotions or agendas. I'm sorry. We believe that the mission is more important than people's feelings or agendas. So we'll offend you for the sake of Jesus. And I would say that from the stage all the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
we're going to have lights and we're going to do this, but we're going to offend you because we're going to reach people for Jesus. Then the second statement that we decided to be as a church is we are going to be a church that gears to the young and leans into the wisdom of the wise. So I target the 25 to 35-year-old male. And the reason I do
Like
that
on
is because I'm a
purpose.
kids pastor
Yeah.
on purpose. Because as a kids pastor, I could put together a GI Joe party, and the boys and the girls are going to love it. But if I put together a My Little Pony party, only the girls are coming.
Yeah.
And it was just we knew that in our culture. Fifth
Right.
grade boys think like 25 to 35-year-old boys. And and so we said we're gonna talk. I'm gonna talk about sports. Go
Yeah.
Sounders.
Yeah.
As, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna just talk to 25, 35-year-old males that have brand new families and they're figuring out what to do with this new baby that just came.
Yep.
We're gonna gear to the young. So our music is geared to the young, but we're gonna lean into the wisdom of the wise. Frank, here's the miracle story. I would have never predicted this. In the first 7 years of our growth, the second largest baptism demographic was 65 plus.
Wow.
Shut up.
Yeah.
As we were reaching young people, old people started coming, giving their life to Jesus because old people don't want to be part of a dead church. They want to be part of a live church and they want to be where their grandkids are at. And then while they're there, they're just hanging out. They figure out Jesus loves me too. And we have seen so much life transformation. Most of our growth is lost people coming to know Jesus, or de-churched people who have just given up on church and they're slowly making their way back. So that's really been our story, of how. I'll give you one more verse because I like to throw a Bible verse in there because it is a heart verse for me. Um, when Jesus talked to the Pharisees, and he said to them that they were all ticked at him because he was hanging out with sinners. He told them the story of the 99 sheep and the one that was missing. And at the very end of that parable, Frank, this is such a, I get excited thinking about it. Here's what Jesus says to those Pharisees: there is more joy in heaven over the one that is found than the 99 who stayed righteous. Well, for the body of Christ, our goal is to bring joy to heaven. It's not that Jesus didn't care about the 99. He just knew they will never reach their discipleship maximum potential if we're not focused on reaching the one. And
Yeah.
that's who we are as a church.
Dude, I love that. So I've lots of questions running through my head. The one that
Sorry, I
stands
was
out.
talking a lot. I was just
No,
going.
no, dude. I like it's great. I just think hearing the story and how you kind of went through it is a big deal. One of the things you said is you picked it. Like you picked, we're going after the 25-year-old male, and
Yeah,
you like unapologetically, no secrets, told the church that's what we're doing,
yeah, yeah,
and went after that. I not like I know every church in the world, but it strikes me as that's a hard thing for churches that have been around for a long time to do because they
yeah,
have their existing membership, and especially if it's a membership that is
yeah,
getting older, and that's normal for a lot of churches. Like
yeah,
maybe at one point in
yeah.
time you were young and those people stuck around, and now you're a bit older and the youth aren't coming anymore, and you're stuck wondering why and how do we fix this and what do
Mm-hmm,
we do. And I've heard that time
mm-hmm,
and time again. But I think churches, again, this is a blanket statement, but they struggle picking like I'm going to focus on this. Like
mm.
businesses are
There,
taught like pick a niche, pick something that you focus on and do really really well, and serve that audience and build your business that way. But churches
yeah,
don't think like that. Yeah, you did it, and obviously have seen some fruit from it. Like, was that a hard thing to do? Did you?
yeah,
Was there a lot of resistance in going through
yeah.
that kind of thing?
Yeah, there is a lot of resistance. A guy wrote me a letter and he quoted the Bible and he says, "Woe!" It's Jeremiah, I think 23. It says, "Woe to the shepherds that are scattering my sheep,"
Mm,
and then it goes on to say, "And I will bring upon them judgment, wrath," and then that's all the note said.
right.
And then it said, "Get rid of John, who was our worship pastor, who is still our worship pastor and is an incredible leader." And I read that, and I'm a brand new pastor. It's in the first 6 months of pastoring this church, and I'm like, am I a terrible shepherd?
Right.
But you know what happened is, I looked up the verse that he quoted, and he stopped in the middle of the verse, and there was the word but. And then it says right after the but, I will bring up shepherds that will bring back my sheep together, and I will prosper them. And I'm like, dude, the guy tried to be a prophet. He just shut up too soon.
Right.
And the guy that meant to write this note to harm me had really encouraged me that day. In fact, I still carry that note with me, and I've read it to the church a couple of times. How encouraging it is. And the guy signed it JD. And so I went through the pictorial directory. Do you remember those things? And I go, I'm going to find you, JD. I'm going to find you. And the Lord sort of corrected me. And he said, Kevin, I haven't called you to find wolves. I've called you to find lost sheep. That shifted my perspective. And
Yeah.
I determined in that moment, that season, I'm going to be a better lover than they are haters.
Wow.
Frank, I have a guy that calls me on my cell phone for the last 2.5 years, multiple times a day, to tell me how much he hates me. And there's a story behind that. I helped he was beating his wife, and I got her out of that. Our team got her out of that
Yeah.
situation, and he hates me.
Wow.
You know, I love this man, and I pray for him. He calls me every day. I blocked his number, but it still gets more. And we just want to be better lovers than they are haters.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to smile, and I'm going to reach lost people, and people are going to shoot arrows. And I think, here, personal big picture, I think we've lost the command that God gave Joshua to be strong and courageous.
Courageous. Yeah.
And I think we're working so hard to keep 99 people happy, we lose the one. And there's more joy in heaven over the one. And I'm just sold out, committed to reaching lost people for Jesus.
Yeah.
And I have to, because that's what disciples people.
Totally.
When
And
I,
you get outward focused, right? Like you're outward focused
yeah,
on other people, and then you see that working, right? You see God's plan working and the miracles in people's lives, and like that gets you
oh,
motivated and excited and
it's
builds your
exciting. It's
faith.
contagious.
It builds
Yeah.
your faith. It builds everybody else's faith. You're studying the Bible with people, and you're watching God do
Mm.
things in their lives, and like that's absolutely contagious. You know?
A phrase that we say around here is we want cussing in the hallways. I love that, because we don't want perfect people coming. We want screwed up people. I want someone to come up to you and say, that was a blankety great worship service. Now, I don't want my staff doing that personally,
Right.
and we're working on that. But I I want cussing in the hallways, and then I want people around that are going to walk with them and encourage them and love them where they're at.
Right.
God's big, and people are screwed up, but we're okay with that.
Right. Right. That's
It's fun.
it's kind of the
I
whole
hope
point,
fun
right?
comes by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
What so I don't talk me through some of the biggest challenges along the way, right? This is a 10-year journey. So
It
like
is.
I'm sure there's lots that went on, but what were some of the biggest challenges along the way?
Well, I think, one lady, we have a lady who probably sacrificed more for our changes than any other individual in our church. She stood up in a board meeting once and said, "Don't tell me you guys don't like change." She goes, "All you 60-year-olds go to the hospital and you're thankful for change." Here's what she said, and I quoted this from the scripture from the platform later. I go, "You guys want 21st century medicine. You guys just want 1960s church. And it's time you start changing." I'm like, I can't say that.
No.
She can say that,
Yeah.
And so I think some of the key things that we did is I always told the people, I'm very transparent. They always know where I'm at. Our staff is transparent. We're very open and honest, and there's no secrets. What we talk about in the boardroom, our facility people know.
Mm,
And so that's allowed this. There's no politics. There's no game playing. There's no climbing the ladder. We are just doing this together in the
right.
messiness of now. Sometimes there's a person walking through a private thing. There's wisdom there.
Right.
But for the most sake, we're just talking about where we're at. I think that allowed people to trust us
Yeah.
when they wanted to question us. I also didn't chase down people who were upset. We just kept moving on and being who we were being.
Mhm.
And eventually, and when we were just focused on the mission, a lot of the smoke chasing I could have done never really became fires.
Wow.
Um, and what we found is many of the people that left at the early, I would say good 60% of them have all come back. They sort of come back sheepish, but
Yeah.
we give them big hugs and love them as they come back,
Yeah.
because we have proven that we are faithful to who we are saying we're going to be, and you can trust that.
Right.
So I think that was it. Now let me speak organizationally. That's where it's been the hardest.
Really.
Most of the staff that we started with, though, we still have, and that's remarkable.
Yeah.
Um, and we want to bless our staff. Everybody starts with about 5 weeks vacation. I was gonna go unlimited vacation, but I read that when you go unlimited, people feel guilty taking it,
Yeah.
and if you give it the 5 weeks, they'll use it, and that's what we wanted, because we push our people hard. Our gatherings start on Wednesday, so we have a gathering Wednesday here at Kalispell campus. We have a gathering Wednesday night, then one Saturday, then three on Sunday. I preach all those live, so it's a fast turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
So we're generous with vacation, and we let people go. So we have a fun culture to be in.
Yeah.
They know what's going on. And the other thing is, and I love this aspect of our culture, um, we want to hear people's dreams. And then I feel like my number one job right now is to help people fulfill their dreams.
Wow.
And if that's here, great. If that's at another church, I'm the biggest fan to help them get there.
Yeah.
And they know that. And so I'll pull people in. And one lady came into my office. She sat down. I go, "Tell me your dream." And she goes, "I want your job." And I said, "Let's figure out how to make that happen."
Yeah.
So we're all for each other. And so we're gonna get her at the next board meeting. I'm gonna have her cast her dream, and we're gonna have fun with it. But people will give you everything if it's Jesus's model.
Yeah.
Jesus said this when he was before he died. He said, the world will use power for their own good. And he makes this statement, but among you, it will be different. And then you wash their feet. Ah, that's how I want it to be in our culture.
Yeah.
I just want it to be different. And the community has recognized that, Frank. We've been voted the number one place to work in our valley.
Did you go back to
And
that
that's pretty
Starbucks?
cool.
Did you go back to the Starbucks barista like 10 years later and be like, "Hey,
Well,
which church should we?"
you know, Um, that Starbucks, nobody from that church, or from that church, Starbucks can be like a church. Um, Nobody went to church at that Starbucks. In the course of 3 years, 70% of that Starbucks and the manager would be baptized in our church. And
Come on.
that's just a Jesus thing. That's
Hey,
just Jesus.
that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, give
It,
me a
it,
few
it's
more.
unbelievable.
Like, that's a cool story. Give me a few more of those. Like, give me a few more of those, like,
There was a
just
man who was the
God
shop
moments.
teacher. Yeah, he's the best cusser I've ever met in my life. The guy can cuss and he's a drinker. He can drink so much. And he was the local shop teacher. He had to quit because he liked to throw kids up against the lockers. And he walked into church.
That worked in, like,
Someone's
the
like,
'60s,
"What?"
not now.
Yeah, perfect. And he just had a reputation in town. It's just a hard drinking, rough, tough guy. Walked into church one day, gave his life to Jesus. I don't even know how. And we have a saloon. What's our most famous saloon here in Kalispell? It's called Moose's Saloon, sawdust floor. And he gave his life to Jesus. He would go drink his beer at that saloon and invite everybody to church. And he had a battery pack that kept his heart going. But he wanted to get baptized. Came in mind, goes, "I gotta get effing baptized. How do I do this?" And so we figured out how to baptize him. But he loves Jesus.
Yeah.
I did his funeral a couple years ago, and his his brother stood up and he goes, "I knew my brother as a drinking jerk till he walked in and met Jesus, and now he's just a drinking Jesus lover." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll figure all that out. God's good. He's crazy." But it I mean that guy has led so many people to our church.
Yeah.
And so there was a lady, and let me give you a news story, because we like to think our wins expire within a week. That's a phrase that we say. You always need a news story. So here's a story from a week ago. A lady came to church, walked in, first time here. And I said, "What brought you to Canvas today?" Because I'm in the lobby meeting her. She goes, I, I was drinking the night before and I woke up this morning. I never wake up early. And I just thought I should go to church.
Hmm.
I never go to church. Here's what happened. It's pretty awesome when the Holy Spirit is waking people up and he's inviting them to your church, which is really his church.
Yeah.
But he trusts that we're going to take care of them. that we're going to love them, and that we're not going to compromise the truth that will set them free. So that was last week. So this lady sat in the church. I met her when she was coming in, and I hugged her when she was leaving. Will she come back? I think so. And I'm praying so. Name
Yeah.
is Susie, but I'm hoping so.
That's so cool. Well, I don't want to take all your time, but I do want to talk about like you've kind of woven it in, so we'll just see where it goes. But
Yeah, go ahead.
like staff culture
Yeah,
and creating like a stat like attracting that top talent and having a great staff culture. Like what have you I
yeah,
would imagine over the course of 10 years that's a big focus of yours to make sure that your staff is killer
yeah,
and you have a great culture there. And you have mentioned some things, but what do you do to make sure you're hiring the right kind of people and you're creating the right kind of culture on your team?
yeah. A couple quick things. We're a very collaborative culture. Sermons are written together. People have voice. In fact, let me say it this way. I'll start here. Um, I think in two different ways. We have an org chart that everybody answers to somebody. I answer to the board, very transparent with the board. But I believe a person who's above being asked questions will do questionable things.
Mm,
And so everybody is accountable to somebody. But the org chart, and this is key, the org chart doesn't determine the team chart. The team chart and how we do teams here is based on who's the smartest people in the room to handle those kind of things. So, for example, the gathering team, we have a team that puts together our gathering. I don't serve on that team. So I find out what our gathering is going to look like. Now, when we first started, for the first 7 years, I was in the gathering team and I led the gathering team.
yeah.
But it came to a point as the church grows, my job is just to give everything away. I'll say this: it's more fun to pastor a church of 1,000 than 4,000, because you just give everything you love away. Like I think I should be on the creative team, but they don't want me, so I don't get to be on the creative team. I have to give that away. I'll tell you the three things I do in a minute. But so the guy who runs our gathering team, his name is Justin. His direct supervisor serves under him on that team. And because we build teams based on gifting, and that allows no matter who you are, you can take your gift and you can find a place to serve, and you're going to have influence. So we're very quick at giving influence away. That has been wonderful because everybody can dream. The second thing that we do is we're a high feedback culture, and I have to model this. So Wednesday night, after I get done preaching, we have whoever on our team wants to come to it. So this is wide open. They come and critique my message. Was I clear enough? Did I make up words? Because sometimes I make up words. Were my jokes not funny? Because every once in a while, I guess they say I'm not funny. They critique it, and I have to listen and accept that. And so it gives everybody a voice to the primary thing that we do. That just creates ownership. The other thing here's the third thing, and then I'll talk about the things that I do. The third thing that we do is because we've been an ongoing growth, and then even through COVID, we sort of plateaued a little bit. Now we're growing out of that again, and we're above where we were before COVID. Um, One of the things that we do is we have to reorg. We've done a reorganization or a re-establishing of teams and positions about every 8 months. Except through COVID, we did not reorg. But besides that, in the last 9 years, we've done 11 reorgs.
Wow.
And here's why we can do that. Um, we have a culture. We have our culture right now. It's called our smack list. One of them is called hold on loosely. We hire you for the mission, not your position. And we tell people that. The mission is to create opportunities for people to experience God in a life-changing way. Currently, we're going to hire you to do this. That could change 3 months after we hire you.
Right, right.
I've had one guy here whose role has changed. His name is Phil. His role has changed every reorg. And he's loyal and committed to the mission as can be. He used to be a communicator, but now he's not a communicator. And we've shifted that around. And he's just like, I'm committed to the mission. My
Yeah.
friends are getting saved. So those things, I
Those are
know
cool.
big picture things, but we just keep hitting those and hitting those.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And did you
And then the
got
three things I do. Go ahead.
just real quick on those three things over the course of 10 years, somewhere along the journey, did you write those down? Did those sort of like crystallize in terms of like how you were going to operate and and do hiring and run like the restructuring and reorgs and
Yeah.
was that like something that you kind of
Uh,
really said, okay, we're going to do this way?
no, I not this way. Precedence means absolutely nothing to me, because what got us here is not what's going to get us there. I'm just happy to reinvent the wheel. Here's how we define leadership: to make the wisest decision with the information you have right now.
Yeah.
Now, and that's the best thing we can do. And then to take people where they don't know where they want to go.
Right.
So we have structure enough so that we can be flexible. Because if you don't have structure, then your flexibility is chaos. So you do need structure. But we have just enough structure. We always keep it thin so that we can flex and do what we need to do in the moment to achieve the greatest return.
Mm.
You know, if you get the greatest return every time you make a decision over the course of 9 years, you're going to get massive amount of returns
Yeah.
because you're making the best decision all the time. And I don't want 3 years ago decision to have an influence on what I need to do today to reach the people that I need to reach today,
Yeah.
especially after COVID. Everything's changed.
It's all, yeah, it's
So
all out the window.
we, yeah, so we sit down as a team, and we go, what do we need to do today? And we came out of COVID. We're going to plant 12 churches in the next 10 years in rural America and in 3 hub cities. And we'll figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
I think I can say one more thing. I talk
Yeah.
a lot. One more thing is we did started a school of ministry 5 years ago. And we decided that was going to be part of the DNA of our church,
Mm-hmm.
and that we would serve the students and have that kind of an attitude instead of the students served us. And so, and that's exploded to over 100 students now that are getting a 4-year accredited degree. And that is our pipeline
Yeah.
that we continue to hire from because they know our culture, they know we love them, and we serve them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Man, I could keep chatting forever. This is such a cool story. So let's just last question on this topic. So it's 2022. We're not
Yep.
necessarily out of COVID and all the crazy, but we're kind of on this different phase of all of that kind of stuff. Like what's going on like right now? What's top of mind for your church as we're kind of middle 2022?
There's a couple things going on. I really need to get our people back on some mission trips because we haven't had mission trips for a while,
Yeah.
um, and we partner with an organization that we sponsor a lot of kids through, and we want to take our people there. I think that's something that we've been talking about as a team. We've extended our worship time, so we used to have 1-hour gatherings. We just felt coming out of COVID, we needed to emphasize that a little bit more. So we've extended our worship time a little bit more, and we're making moments of pause. It's just good to sit there and pause. So that's been something that we've been intentional on.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is I'm preaching truth with more boldness. Last year I was praying personally in my own life and all of our communicators, but I was praying for boldness, and the Lord said, "Good, be humble." And that boldness really comes out of humility,
Wow.
because boldness without humility is arrogance. And so, um, we really, in a loving, humble way, are trying to be bold with biblical truth that sets people free. So we're just preaching to a very illiterate congregation. We're preaching biblical truth. We're calling the Jesus story. Start at Genesis, and we're working our way through Revelation, hitting the big capstones of faith.
Yeah.
Oh, people are eating it up. They just have no idea,
Yeah.
and it's been great.
That's
So
cool.
that's where we're figuring. Now that's spiritually, organizationally, we're planting churches. We're looking at planting a church in Missoula, Montana, coming up here very soon. Our campuses are taking off. Every campus is growing by conversion growth right now. Um, and I will say this: in rural America, the way you do a church plant is just like you would do it in the metropolitan area. We overthink culture sometimes. People are people.
Yeah.
We all breathe oxygen. We all have issues. Just preach truth. Stop playing all the culture games. You'll reach a whole bunch of people for Jesus.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. All right. 3 quick questions.
Shoot.
What's a book that everyone needs to read?
Well, right now I'm in my doctorate, so I'm reaching a whole bunch of books I would recommend you don't read.
I
Because
want
they're
one that you've read that you're
just,
like, people, this is a book that I just think everyone's got to read. Bible, of course. Give me another one.
yeah, Bible. This is embarrassing to say, but it's a book I read every year, so that's probably the one I need to say. And that is John Maxwell's Leadership Gold. The guy is just
Okay.
He's
Just
just so good.
2 weeks ago, I was in Florida with John
Yeah.
Maxwell in a small little gathering with Scott Wilson, who you might know.
Oh yeah, I know Scott. Yeah.
And I got to hear John Maxwell for an entire day, dinner at his house. I've never, like, probably the best speaking I've ever heard in my life.
Oh. I,
Just
he's my
incredible to
favorite.
just listen to and just soak it all in.
Yeah. So I buy his Audible books, and the way he writes, and then he'll talk to you in the Audible book. The Audible books, he's like, he'll say this. He'll go, "Friend, I know this is the end of the chapter, but because it's just you and me, I want to share with you a couple other things that aren't in the book."
Yeah.
And you feel like Grandpa's talking to you,
Yeah,
and it's just
totally.
like you and he. And his heart is so, I just love him. So I read Leadership Gold. I know it almost memorized. I read it every year. It is a phenomenal, fundamental leadership book.
All right. I'm gonna go get it. I've read a bunch of his books. He's written 90, if you didn't know that, which is absolutely
No, I did
crazy.
not know that.
I wouldn't have known that either.
And well,
But
he's a great author because he just says the same thing in different ways in some of the same books. But in Leadership Gold, the reason I like it is he waited until he was 60 to write that book, and then he thinks it's his best stuff.
yeah, very cool. Okay, next one. What's a podcast that you're listening to right now?
I just got done listening to the Mars Hill or I forget, the Christianity Today
Yeah.
podcast.
Okay.
I just listened to that one. And so I'm navigating through all of that. It's fascinating, great stuff there to learn from, lots of opinions. So we had our staff listen to it. We're discussing it together. Do you know another podcast that I just think is excellent is the Bible Project?
Yeah.
And just, I use a lot of their material in my sermon prep. And I love their heart for the Word of God.
Yeah.
And sometimes they challenge me, and I that's a great one.
Yeah. I love watching their YouTube videos with my kids.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing. Where can folks go just to connect with Canvas Church and learn more about you?
Yeah. Well, canvas.church. How simple is that? That's our website.
Winning.
I do a podcast called Life in Gear. That's also, you can find that on canvas.church website. And that's just how to live life with joy and adventure.
Come on.
And so we have a lot of fun with that. We do that once a month, release that. So, and then, that'd be the way to do it.
Man, I love it. Thanks for your time today. This has been awesome.
Good. I hope so. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Modern Church Leader. We'll catch you next week.